everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather, and today I'm going to bring you an adapted Regency recipe. Now, this is adapted in two ways. Number one, I have many food allergies, so this recipe will be adapted to what I can eat in terms of the fruits and vegetables I can eat, being dairy-free and nut-free. It is also vegetarian and vegan friendly, so stick around if that is something that intrigues you, although this recipe can also be adapted for meat lovers as well. So as I was poking around in Martha Lloyd's household book, I came across a few recipes that were intriguing, but then I came across one that sounded rather like a recipe that we already make in my family. And that was vegetable pie, which is adapted here by Maggie Black and Deirdre LaFay. Now, Martha Lloyd described it as, take as many vegetables as are in season. She suggests cabbage, turnips, carrots, cucumbers, and onions. Fry them in butter. When well fried, drain and season them with pepper and salt, and lay them in layers in your dish or crust. Cover them with a crust. Have ready some good gravy to put into the pie when baked. It must not be put into a very hot oven. So I looked at that and thought, you know what? Let's make this slightly easier, because any kind of pastry does not work for me being non-dairy. Usually there's dairy rolled into any kind of puff pastry or pie crust. So instead, I have the recipe for a vegetable cobbler, which I will show you down below, which is very similar, but I think a lot easier in the long run to make than this particular recipe. It can also be adapted to include whatever vegetables you like or whatever vegetables are in season. It is great just on its own, or we have found if you have leftover ham, if you've made a ham for a holiday or a ham steak, if you cut that up and put it in along with the vegetables, it is also delicious. Then to cover it, we tend to cover them with a buttermilk biscuit, and I found a similar-ish recipe here in terms of Mrs. Dundas's biscuits, because these biscuits are very, very plain. They're not sweetened, so they're not like Dunkin' Your Tea biscuits, because they just involve butter, flour, and salt. So I thought, let's take that and take it one step further to cover this vegetable cobbler. Okay, so for our vegetable pie, we've got some thyme over here, peas, sweet potatoes, green beans, you can use fresh or frozen, got some spinach that we can throw in, carrots, white potatoes, some of my soy butter, you can use any other kind of butter that you need, and some chicken broth. So this is about 4 white potatoes and 4 sweet potatoes and 2 large carrots. You can adjust as necessary. And we're getting those on the boil first. They are bigger and they will need the longest amount of time to cook. Then our green beans will go in a little bit later, and our frozen peas, and the spinach probably right at the very end. Last, yeah. So while those are cooking and everything else is waiting, we're gonna start the gravy. Well, gravy, quote unquote. Sauce. So this is going to start with a roux. So we've got some of my soy butter here, for those of you who are also dairy-free. And now we've added just a 1/4 cup of flour. I'm gonna stir that in. Another 1/4 until we get that nice paste. It could be a little thicker even. Well, add more if you think. Better. Okay, nice thick paste like so. And now we're going to add in, for us it's going to be chicken broth. You can use vegetable broth as well. have in the past used both chicken broth and finished it with a little milk to give it that creaminess when we could have milk. So that's another option if people would like to do that.
If you want to do this the standard way with your standard milk and butter, you go for it.
Absolutely.
This is my non-dairy way of adapting it. And of course, season to taste. We're adding a little bit of pepper. You can do salt or anything else that you like. Okay, so we have our gravy done. We threw a little thyme in as well. And our veg are now done. So now we are going to combine the two rather than throwing it in a load of pastry dough, which you can do if you want, but that's not really a non-dairy friendly. And it's a lot of work. So we're going to combine it with two different recipes, but we're going to throw this into a greased pan as is. Drained veg goes in first. And then the gravy. So you should end up with something that looks sort of like that.
So here is the recipe for the buttermilk biscuits. You can pause on this if you want to write it down. And then what you're going to want to do is combine all of your dry ingredients. So that's your flour, baking powder, baking soda, a little bit of sugar, and then cut your butter, this is more of that soy butter, into the dough. And then to make the buttermilk, we actually took oat milk and let it sit with the juice of half a lemon in it. And that gives you that same acidity that buttermilk has. And once it's all combined, you're going to knead it together and just pat it out. And you can use a biscuit cutter, or you can just use a juice glass to cut out your biscuits. Then when you're done, just lay your dough out on top of the veg and the gravy so that it looks a bit like this. And then we put it into the oven at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Then 12 or 13 minutes later, you have this. Really, you're just waiting for the biscuits to be done because your veg is already cooked. And there you have a wonderful vegetable pie or cobbler, and hope you enjoy. Bon appetit! So take this recipe as you will. If you have any questions about it, leave me a comment down below and I will do my best to answer it. I hope this recipe intrigues you, and I hope it pleases the historical accurists among you in terms of it's not strictly speaking a Regency recipe, but it is cooking within the means that the Austens probably had in terms of cooking with the seasons in mind and with economy in mind. If you make this recipe, please let me know down below how it turned out, or contact me on Instagram, which is also in the description box. And if you're interested in your own Regency recipes, whatever they may be, I would encourage you to check out the Jane Austen cookbook, or if you want to go that little bit more difficult, check out Martha Lloyd's Actual Household book. But if you want something a little more straightforward, go for this one. These are all of Martha's recipes adapted for the modern cook. Until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.